All right, welcome everyone. My name is Coach David, and it is April 2nd. Okay. Now, normally we have a full kind of training that is dedicated to financial aid today. But as I always tell families, there's two parts to this college admissions game. The first part is getting in. The second part is making sure that you get enough money to pay for it so that you don't have to dip into your retirement. You don't have to kind of, dip into your investments, so on and so forth. Okay. So we are going to talk about kind of two different areas today, right? One is going to be about the school side, right? What your kind of current junior should be doing, right? We'll also talk about financial aid, what to expect, and also what parents you should be doing, right? Because there's some things that parents need to do during this process as well. Okay, so just to give you a quick overview of what we will be talking about today, right? So we're going to talk about financial aid. We're going to talk about academics and kind of school things, right? We're also going to talk about other important things that you need to kind of think about as we are kind of going into application season, right? Now, if you do want to get this replay because you think it was so critical and all the information I was giving you was so great, right? It will be on our private, YouTube channel, right, for our coaching families. If you are one of our families and from our Facebook, go ahead and respond to the post that I will make in our Facebook groups. Okay. Now, just a little bit about me, right? I am a former college and law school admission reader, right? I have also, worked in the legal space, right? And I have helped hundreds and thousands of families, right, with their financial aid, right? And so today I'm going to be kind of putting on both of my hats, right? That of kind of one of the kind of head strategists in our coaching program, also as the kind of head of the financial aid program as well. Okay. Now, just to kind of like give you guys a little bit of background about where I was today, right? So, um, a lot of people might have been looking for me in our coaching program, but today I was gone, right? And I was gone because I was at a kind of work conference, right? I was at the Western Association of College Admissions Counselors. Okay. It was held at St. Mary's College in Moraga, right? Some people might know that area, some people might not, but it is a quiet suburb in the East Bay area, about 25, 30 minutes away from San Francisco. Okay. Now, the reason why I went there was because I wanted to provide more for our kind of families, right? Now, when I got there, right, I was listening intently. One of the things that I realized was that a lot of people don't have basic information, right? Even when I was walking in, right, the majority of people at that conference were high school guidance counselors, right? And while I do think that high school guidance counselors do a great job, and they're definitely overworked, they have huge, student to kind of employee ratios when it comes to kind of meeting with students and doing those things, right? The one area that I saw that they weren't able to help families is kind of like getting into the nitty gritty and the specifics about each individual student, right? And so that it was where I was earlier today, right? They did have a taco truck, which I was really happy about. So I got to eat some tacos. But I just wanted to kind of let you guys know, if you guys are interested, I will probably be kind of unveiling what I learned later on in a training, probably. I believe it's on the 24th, April 24th. Okay. So that will be a training that we have, right? I'll be taking over for Coach Victor. That's usually on Thursdays, right? And so I will kind of unveil what I learned there, kind of what, and representatives from the UCs, the CSUs, various different colleges were there as well. So I'll kind of try and unravel and kind of piece together everything that was said so that it is a little bit more coherent. Okay. And so I will be kind of sharing that with you there. Now, when it comes to financial aid, we are having this kind of this meeting on a very auspicious day, right? Because as I have been telling families over and over and over, if you have a senior right now and you didn't apply for financial aid, today is technically the deadline for the priority. It's like this is the kind of it, right? April 2nd is the priority deadline, right? And so after this, can you still get aid? Yeah, you can, but again, they always say like the money will run out, right? Or like the allocated money will run out, right? They never really actually run out of money. It's just that the money that they allocated for a certain year might run out, right? So if you are a senior right now and you have not done your financial aid, right? And you're here because you saw the price tag of the schools that you got into and you didn't apply for any financial aid, Man, I wasn't going to do this, but if you are a senior, right, and you're in California, right, and you haven't applied for financial aid and you're kind of come here as a last ditch effort to kind of figure out what you can do, I need you to email me, right? Like right now, right? So I'm going to put the email in the chat here. Okay. I want you to email this email. Okay. I will find a time to meet with you tonight, whether it is, 9 o'clock in the evening, 10 o'clock in the evening, 11 o'clock in the evening. It is the kind of like, it is the 12th hour now, right? So we should talk about it, figure out if we are going to move forward. And if we are, right, I'll tell you what I think I can save you guys, how we're going to move forward and all those different pieces. Okay. But the priority deadline ends today. Okay. Now, again, I put the email in the chat, so go ahead. Again, if you are a senior and you need to talk to me today, right? Um, I took the day off to make sure that I had enough time to go to the conference earlier today. And so I have meetings starting at 6:30 if that is something that you want. Okay. Now, as far as financial aid news, which I know is a big kind of like draw for a lot of our families, like what the heck is going on? A lot of this stuff was also kind of brought up at kind of the WACAT conference, right? And again, I will kind of unpack that. I need time to debrief on my own too. I took a lot of notes. So, but generally speaking, everyone's kind of worried about it. But the colleges don't know what's going on, right? High schools don't know what's going on, right? I think I might have the kind of the most interest in it. So I feel like I wanted to be a part of a lot of conversations, but I didn't want to step on any toes, right? But generally speaking, right? These are the high level things that have been happening. There's nothing new out there. Everything is just a repeat of the news that I've been kind of giving you guys for the last 2, 3 weeks, right? U.S. Department of Education possibly being eliminated or divided into smaller chunks and given out to other departments, right? Colleges are losing federal funding to do a variety of reasons, right? Including not abiding by DEI, like in it, or kind of the executive order getting rid of DEI initiatives, right? Now, there are a lot more colleges that are looking to gap the divide between the losses that they're getting in funding and family costs, right, by increasing aid budgets. That's always a good thing to hear, right? And then this is kind of like a not good thing, right? This is kind of like maybe the new piece of news, right? But there's many colleges that are going above that 100K mark, right? I feel like everyone's racing to be like the first 10 schools that are over $100,000. But Vanderbilt was the kind of like the trendsetter, and now another one is Wellesley, right? In Massachusetts, right? That one has gone over the 100K mark for total cost of attendance per year. Okay. So again, there's no new news. It's just kind of like the reiterations of what has been out there, right? But I will try to kind of keep you guys up to date with any new information, right? A lot of it's still up in the air. Things are still kind of, getting settled, right? New administration, they're trying to make a lot of moves first 100 days, right? Things like that. But once things become more clear and more precise, I will try to provide you with the most up-to-date information. Okay. But with that, let us get into the training. Again, my fair warning when it comes to financial aid, right? If you are here and this is something that you're going to say to me during your consultation, you don't even need to bring it up, right? Oh, my family makes a little bit too much money, right? My family's not going to be eligible, right? We own our own home. We have a rental property, right? This, that, so on and so forth. There's a lot of rumors out there, and every single one of them has not been a deterrent to our families getting financial aid, right? So again, I will have the kind of the QR code. I will have a link that you can use to sign up for a financial aid call. I will also have a QR link where you can sign up for a kind of breakthrough call, right, with our coaching team if that's something that you want as well, right, to learn more about kind of the college admissions process. All right. Now, again, because it is split, right? And I always kind of, like to kind of talk about egelloC, which is our parent company, right? I do want to make sure that families that do have juniors, right? And I see a bunch of people that have marked juniors in the Q&A and in the chat, right? We do have a college application intensive that starts this month, right? Our first Kickstart, right? Which is a 1-day weekend event where we basically work with families and students, right? Mostly students, right? Families, you guys are there for emotional support. But again, mom and dad, you need to stay out of the conversations. We are talking to students, right? But it is the kind of day where we have students come in so that we can formulate their ideas, get them on track with a very solid rough draft, right? Those will be happening in April, May, and June, right? And then the second part of our college app intensive is our accelerator. Okay. The accelerator is going to be in a small group format, right? 5 to 1, right? Student to coach, right? And those are going to be in July, August, and September. If you are interested in this, again, you can also reach out to us via text. We can provide you more information, right? But you can also visit our website. It is collegeappintensive.com. Okay. But again, getting into college is one piece. The other piece, getting money for college, right? So hopefully we can take care of both sides of the coin for you. Okay. Now, class of 2026, right? Let us get into the training. So, what are the things that you need to be thinking about? Okay. There's two sides of the puzzle, right? Like I've been saying since the beginning of this training, right? Juniors, listen up, right? If you are a junior family, you need to be listening. Okay. Open those ears. I know that a lot of people might be getting ready for dinner, right? Kids just got home. It is kind of like crazy, but this is something that you do need to hear. Okay. There's two sides. The first side is admissions, right? So the things are what types of things should you be focused on, right? And we'll talk about rigor, we'll talk about testing, and we'll talk about letters of recommendation. Okay. And then on the financial aid side, the question is, what are we supposed to be doing this spring? How to prepare for the fall, and what are you doing in the fall? Okay. So those are the things that we're going to go over today really quickly. Again, I try to give the kind of large overview, any small, like specific things. If you do have questions, please make sure to ask them in the Q&A or in the chat. I will try to answer them as they come up. But if not, I will make sure to address them at the end. Okay. So let's first talk about the admission side of things, right? Your student getting into the school, right? One of the first things that colleges look when they're looking at a student is their academic rigor, right? So for juniors right now, you need to be pushing or maintaining your academics, okay? So you want your junior year to be your shining achievement, okay? Now, there's different students that come from different backgrounds. We have students that have excelled their whole high school career. We also have students that might have started off a little bit rocky, but they're getting a lot better, right? And then we have students that kind of yo-yo back and forth, right? Sometimes some years are better than others, some semesters are better than others, right? But whatever it is, you need to remember that this last semester and last kind of like trimester is kind of like the last grouping of grades that your school or like the colleges that you apply to will see. Okay. Now, I know that a lot of people will say, no, there's private schools that do look at your first semester grades of senior year. That is true, right? But there are a lot of schools that will never see your senior year grades until you are in. One of those being like the UCs. The CSUs will also not see it, right? And if you apply early action or early decision, right, to any kind of other schools, right, you will not be able to show your first semester grades. Now, having said that, is your senior year not important? No, it is very important. Okay. The reason why it is important is because they take the strength of your senior year schedule into account. So if there's a student that took 6 APs junior year and now they're taking none senior year, they're going to see that as a problem, right? So again, I understand burnout is real, right? And so that's one of the things that we talk about with our students, right? You need to make sure that you're kind of getting used to things, right? 10th grade year, take a couple APs, right? Push it the next year, push it senior year. That's what we want to see. But if you have had obstacles, this junior year, kind of these ending spring grades are going to be very important to show that you have made improvement, have made growth, right? Now, there might be juniors out there and it's like, well, yeah, sorry, I didn't really push myself as hard as I could have, right? Then this summer is a great opportunity to increase general rigor or show your interest, right? So whether that's community college classes or online high school classes or summer camps or programs, those are areas that you want to be pushing in to show colleges that you really mean business. Okay. Now, for community college classes, I get it. There are some students at certain schools where their school will not approve them, and that's the only way to do it. But that's why it's great that there's multiple options. Online high school classes, you don't need to get anyone's approval to take those, right? So there are different options for different students. There's even kind of like extension courses at certain colleges where you don't need anyone's approval to take it, right? I do know that kind of like in the Bay Area, schools are very different. Some schools are like, yeah, community college classes, we love them. Yeah, give me that form, let me sign it, right? There's also schools where it's like, no, you can only take this class. That's the only one you can take. We're not going to sign off on any other thing, right? So keep that in mind. I understand that there are restrictions for different school districts, but this is what the general trend that we want to see. Okay, so that's what I will have to say about rigor. Okay. Now, when it comes to testing, okay, I'm talking about standardized testing, right? And I'm not talking about your school CAA testing, right, for English and math, right? Those are just kind of tests you take to make sure that you've hit certain benchmarks that the state has outlined, right, for graduating high school, right? When I'm talking about testing, I am talking about SAT and ACT. Now, for a lot of families out there, you might not even be thinking about it, right? Because it's like, oh, well, everything was test optional, a couple years ago, right? Or test blind, right? That was during COVID times, right? During the pandemic, right? Unfortunately, there are a lot of schools that are returning to test required. Now, again, qualifier, right? The UCs and the CSUs are test blind. They will not take your test score into account, right? There are people that say, oh, well, there's a space to put it, right? On the application. There is actually not, right? If you are an international student, right, coming from a different country, right, then you might be able to turn in your English kind of SAT or ACT, right, the English section, in order to show your English proficiency. But if you are a domestic US student, there is no way to turn in your SAT, your full SAT score to the UCs or CSUs. They don't want it. If you do try to turn it in, they just see you as someone that doesn't follow the rules. So I would not do it. Okay. But like I said, there are a lot of out-of-state public schools. There's a lot of private schools that are returning to test required. So you need to check what the policy of the schools you're applying to will be. Okay. Now, when will the kind of like finalized results come out as far as if a school is requiring it or not? Unfortunately, if we look at kind of the past couple years, the results as far as if a school is going to be test required or kind of test optional or test blind, the changes don't necessarily happen until the summer, right? Now, because of that, right? You don't want to be in a position where it's like you're scrambling to sign up for a test in August. You're scrambling to try to take the test before your early action, early decisions are there, right? So I always tell students, right? If you have finished Math 3 or Algebra 2 Trig, then you should find a place to take a full-length diagnostic test under test conditions. When I say under test conditions, I want it to be timed. I don't want you to just kind of like, very, just kind of in a relaxed state, just like kind of, oh, I'll take a little bit. I'm going to go eat lunch, come back, do this. No, you have to take it all in one sitting, all at one time. That's what we know. That's how we can figure out exactly what your score looks like. Okay. Now, a lot of people, like, they might live in areas where there's not a lot of kind of test prep or tutoring available, right? That's okay. There's a lot of stuff online, right? And the test is digital, so that's fine, right? But what I tell students is I don't want you to take it at home, right? Your bedroom is very, very comfortable for you, right? When you are comfortable, you do better on tests, right? So if you are going to take it kind of on your own, I do suggest you go somewhere a little bit foreign, whether it's a library that has a quiet room, right? Or maybe mom or dad's office that has like a little cubicle that you can take the test in. Whatever it is, you do need to take it somewhere that is not familiar to you. Okay. Then we can figure out what the test strategy is to get you to your goal score, right? Now, just a little kind of tidbit or pro tip of information is this. Okay. So for every 100-point increase, right? And a 100-point increase is like a 2-point increase on the ACT, just roughly speaking, right? So in that situation, we usually suggest that a student study between 20 and 30 hours and do 3 practice tests. Okay. So if you're starting at a 1300 and you're trying to get to a 1500, you multiply that by 2, right? So 40 to 60 hours, 6 practice tests, right? If you're trying to get a 300-point increase, so on and so forth. Okay. So testing is something that you might need to be thinking about right now, right? Now, I know a lot of families just blindly sign up for a test. It's like, oh, we might need the SAT, so we're going to sign up. That is not the way to do it. What's the point of doing that, right? It's like walking into a math test you never studied for, right? Hoping that it goes well. Usually it doesn't, okay? So again, take that practice test, see what you need to do, see how much time you need, and then figure out your testing strategy. The third piece that I want to talk about when it comes to admissions is letters of recommendation, right? Starting early is great in this situation, right? So for our rising seniors, we suggest that students reach out to their teachers to ask them before the end of junior year. Now, a lot of parents are gonna be like, oh, well, like some teachers are already asking, right? Or some teachers are already full, so on and so forth, right? So it does have kind of, there are variations depending on school and teacher and things like that. But generally speaking, if you ask before the end of junior year, most kind of teachers still have spaces left. Okay. Now, in a perfect world, right? This is what we would love to see. One STEM teacher, one humanities teacher or social science teacher. Okay. That's what we would love to have, right? But, right, there's always a but, right? But it is about who knows you best and who you have the best relationship with, right? Now, I always hear these stories. Oh my gosh, you know what? I'm not really that close with my English teacher, but I heard that she writes great letters of recommendation. Really? How do the people know? Because you actually have to sign something on the Common App or whatever app you're using that says you waive your right to actually see your letter of recommendation. And not many teachers actually say, hey, this is what I wrote on your recommendation letter and hand it to you, right? So everyone that says, oh yeah, Mrs. B writes great letters of recommendation, I don't know how they know. Okay. So it's about who you have the strongest bond with, who you've had the most interaction with. That is kind of the key kind of piece here, right? Now, some colleges and majors will have specific requirements that might be met, right? MIT, Georgetown, those are some schools that do have specific requirements. If you have one STEM teacher, one humanities, social science teacher, though, that actually would work for those schools as well. Okay. We have a question here and it says, can we use the same two teachers for all the apps? And the answer to this is yes, you can, right? So it's not like they write a separate letter for each one, right? So your school might use something like Naviance, right? Or Aries or, or Squire or this or that, whatever it is, right? But basically what happens is that the teacher will upload their letter one time, right? And then you tell them which schools you're applying to, and then it gets sent to all of those schools, right? Through that system, right? That's how it happens, right? So don't feel bad, right? That you're asking your teacher to write a letter of recommendation for 17 different colleges. They're only writing one letter, so you don't really need to worry about it. Okay. The other kind of question that we always get asked about letters of recommendation is this, right? Well, Princeton allows 5. Should I get 5 teachers? No, you shouldn't, right? Because if the teachers are going to be saying roughly the same thing, it doesn't need to be beaten into the admissions officers kind of minds 5 different times, right? So maybe you have 2, right? Teacher recommendations, right? And then some schools also do allow for additional recommenders, right? Those additional recommenders might be kind of like a religious leader of the religion that you follow, right? It might be a coach or an arts teacher, right? It might be a mentor or an employer, right? We want to see something different, right? The college application is about us trying to show as many different facets of who we are as a student to the admissions officers. If we show them the same thing 5 times, it doesn't really add to our score. Okay. Now we have another question in the Q&A and it says, do UCs accept letters of recommendation, right? And the answer, surprisingly, is yes. But again, there's a qualifier, right? The qualifier is that it's by invitation only, and we've only seen it from Berkeley. Okay, that's it. Berkeley's the only school that's ever asked for additional kind of recommendation letters, right? So it's usually when students are kind of neck and neck, right? And they're having a hard time choose. They want a little bit more information about the student to make their final decision, okay? So that's why we always tell students, one of the things that we kind of tell them is you need to be checking your email, because if Berkeley emails you and says, hey, we want this extra piece of information, and you don't check your email and it's sitting there and then it goes unanswered, they're going to be kind of like, well, I guess they don't really want to come here anymore, right? That's what's going to happen. So make sure that you're checking your email. Okay. Uh, we have a question that, again, along the same lines with the recommendation, so I'll answer it here. It says, both of my son's math teachers that he had are retiring this year. Could he ask them for letters of recommendation? The answer is yes and no, right? So can he ask them for a letter? Yeah, he definitely can, right? The problem is if your school is on a system like Squire, like Aries, like Naviance, this and that, right? Because once they retire, their email is gone. They don't have access to Naviance anymore. So it is something that you'll have to ask your kind of counselor about, right? To see if they will still have access to do those things. Now, generally speaking, I will say this, right? When teachers retire, they kind of float off into the sunset. They don't want to do anything related to school for a while, right? Think about, teaching students and writing rec letters for the past 35 years and then retiring. Oh man, I don't know. I might want to take a one season off, right? So again, it is something that you need to ask your school about. If your school is using like just if they're just going through the Common App for recommendation letters, which again, not very many schools do, right? They do have some kind of system, right? Some portal for students, right? If they are, then it's a little bit easier. But if they are on a Naviance, Squire, Aries type of system, it's a little bit more difficult, right? You're gonna have to talk to your counselor about the ins and outs of that. Okay. But great questions. I really appreciate them, right? So let's kind of continue on, right? And kind of talk about kind of the admissions to-dos, right? So here's the first thing. You need to make sure that you're ending this year off strong, right? Again, last full transcript that many colleges will see, right? If you've had hiccups, you want to make sure that you show great improvements and trends, right? For testing, make sure you don't just jump into testing, right? Prepare and figure out what you need to do to get to your goal, right? And kind of see what the different, averages are at the schools that you're applying to, right? And then letters of rec, ask early, make sure to check up, right? Like we showed you on the previous slide, right? Oh, one thing I kind of got sidetracked on. I'm going to go back real quick, right? So for letters of rec, this is the timeline of how we want you to do things. You ask them in person before the end of the year, right? Once you get home from asking them and then saying yes, right? Obviously, they could say no as well, right? But if they do say yes, right, then you go home, write them an email, have a great summer, right? Mr. and Mrs. A, right? I will be in touch, kind of, closer to the fall, right? Then maybe about a week before school starts, you send them another email saying, I just wanted to remind you of our conversation, right? Most of our students apply early action, early decision, right? You bring that up saying, I'm most likely going to apply early action, early decision somewhere, right? And so like, this will probably be my first deadline. What do you need from me? Okay. Now, I'm not expecting the teachers to respond like while summer's still going on, but you get in their inbox, right? Then after you're in their inbox, school starts. And then, maybe like the first 2 weeks of school, you stop by that teacher's like office hours, right? Or during lunchtime, just to say hi, right? Show your face, right? And be like, yeah, so I sent you an email a couple weeks ago, about this, about that, right? What do you need me to do? Right? You want to be proactive about this. You don't want to kind of just sit back and wait until your school senior night. Because for a lot of schools, the school senior night like is at the end of September or early October, right? But sometimes that's a little bit too late in the cycle for teachers to be ready by November 1st, which is the early action, early decision deadline for a lot of schools. Okay. So keep that timeline in mind, right? So like maybe May, right? And then August, right? And then first week of school. That should be kind of the timeline that you're thinking about. Okay. With that, I do want to jump to financial aid, make sure that we have stuff there. Oh, I took a lot of time here, right? Because I was answering questions, but I'll try to speed through this as quickly as possible. Okay. So I want to make sure that families understand the financial aid process. Okay. So the first thing is, what is financial aid? Right? So financial aid is any money that is given to students in order to make college more affordable, right? Whether that's grants, scholarships, work study, institutional aid, departmental aid, or loans. They call it a lot of different things, but I kind of just break it up into two different kind of categories. There's free money that you never need to pay back, and there are loans, right? Now, I don't like loans, right? Because, well, you have to pay interest on them, right? But for some situations, it is needed. I get it, right? But the one thing I'll say about loans, and we'll kind of go over this kind of later on in the fall as well, but not all loans are created equal. You might be able to find a better interest rate at your bank, right? For educational loans or student loans, or at a different bank, right? Or a different institution. The government kind of interest rate for students is 6.53%. That's for this year. The interest rate for parent loans, right? If parents take the money out, it is 9.08%, right? It is not a great interest rate, right? But I am trying to get you guys more free money so that you don't have to take loans, okay? That is the whole point of why I'm here, okay? Now, the first step in this process is FAFSA, okay? Now, I hear this so much that it like kind of haunts me while I sleep, right? A lot of people say, we didn't get anything from FAFSA. You're completely correct because most families don't get anything from FAFSA. 90% of people that fill out the FAFSA are not getting their money from there, right? The FAFSA is a form that you fill out. It's like a credit check. You have to fill it out in order to get a credit card, right? So the FAFSA, just think of it as a form. You're not getting anything from here. It's just a form that you have to fill out to move to step 2 of the process. Okay. Now, the FAFSA, right? The open date for the class of 2025 was delayed by 2 months. Okay. But for the class of 2026, I hope that it will remain at the normal date of October 1st. But am I hopeful that that is going to happen? Probably not, right? So whether you're applying to public schools, private schools, out-of-state colleges, this is the first step of the process, right? I just met with like 3 families like kind of like late last week, and they're like, yeah, we didn't really fill anything out because we didn't think we were going to get anything. And then we saw your training and then realized that we probably should have filled things out. And I was like, great, right? And so we had to have a couple emergency meetings in order to try to get things figured out. Okay. But again, like I said, I will be having emergency meetings tonight as well if people need them. Okay. I already see one person in my inbox right now that's like, can we meet tonight? Right. So unfortunately, I will be working later than I thought I was going to, but that's okay. Right. I want to make sure that you guys are taken care of. Okay. And again, for those that say we're not going to qualify, right? We're not going to get anything, right? Well, if you don't turn in this form, that's going to be the case 100% of the time, right? But there are things that you can do to help your situation. Okay. Now, let us kind of talk about what you would need to fill it out. Okay. So a lot of this information is stuff you already know, right? So you'll need your appropriate year tax return. The tax return that will be needed for the 2020 class of 2026 will be the kind of that will be the 2024 tax return. It's from 2 years ago, right? You'll also need to know your social security number, right? An email that you regularly check, right? And that also doesn't just automatically spam stuff, right? You need a unique email, right, for the student and for the parent, right? So you need separate emails, right? You also need a phone number that can receive text messages, right? Again, distinct numbers, one for the parent, one for the student, okay? So again, these are some of the things that you'll need in order to fill it out, right? And again, this is a very brief summary, right? The next step, if you are applying to some private schools, right, or even some out-of-state public schools do require this, right, is the CSS profile, right? Now, what is the CSS profile? The CSS profile is an acronym for the College Scholarship Search Profile, right? It's used by almost 400 institutions in the United States, and it's to find nuggets of money at the colleges, right, that you're applying to that can, that you are kind of eligible for, right? So again, right, it is a form that is kind of like there to help you, right? But it's also a form that is there to kind of like try to block as many people as possible, right? It's another step in trying to disqualify you from getting aid, right? Now, I put this in there, right? It's like, I'll show you how deep they try to get into your life, right? And again, they do really get deep into your life, right? Again, here's the website for it. It is linked to your College Board. College Board is something that you might be a little bit more familiar with. If your student's taking an AP test or an SAT or the PSAT, they have a College Board account already. It is linked to your College Board account. Okay. Now, here are the different things they ask for. Personal information, parental information, those things are pretty normal, right? They also ask for your housing information. They ask how much your mortgage is or your rent is, right? They also ask about people living in your house, right? They ask about academic information, parent details, right? They'll ask if you're remarried, you're separated, kind of those are kind of basic. But when it comes to parent income, right, they're going to ask about the wages you make. They're also going to ask about kind of other income you make from different investments or kind of like rental properties, things like that. They're also going to ask about child support. They're going to ask about housing information. They're going to ask about assets, right? They're going to ask about your retirement, right? And here's one of the things I always tell parents. Your retirement is for you, right? You are not paying into your retirement to pay for your kids' college, right? So I don't know why colleges are asking about it, right? In this world where it's like kind of like everyone for themselves, right? Everyone kind of like, get your piece of, the American pie. I don't know why they're looking at parents' assets to pay for college, right? They're also going to ask about expenses. They're going to ask about, household summaries. They're also going to ask about student income and student assets, right? One of the things I go over so many times throughout the year is that I understand that parents want to prepare students for the future, right? And they want to kind of utilize different tax strategies to bequeath things to their students, right? Whether it be, partial ownership of a house, right? Or this or that, so on and so forth. But student income and assets are seen they're seen as a kind of amount of money that can be pulled from more greedily by the colleges. Okay, so it is something that you need to kind of keep in mind if you are planning on doing any of those things. They'll also ask about special circumstances. Okay, just to give you guys a rough estimate, right? The FAFSA has, I believe, 48 questions that need to be answered, right? The CSS profile has about 200. Okay, so it's about 5 times as large, right? So keep that in mind there. Okay, so as far as financial aid for juniors, these are the things that need to get done. Parents, right? Now, we are 13 days away from the normal tax filing deadline, right? I know families that are signed up with me already, realistically, about 20% of them have actually filed their taxes. The other 80% are families that usually file by October, right? But as I'm having the meeting with you, one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is get it done by late July or early August, right? Now, I know parents, it's tough, right? You don't want to pay more taxes. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. But unfortunately, for this particular year, it is something that you want to get done early, right? Especially if you're going to be part of our program, we need to get it done early so that we can look at your tax return and create a strategy that makes sense for your family. Okay. But again, parents, this year, you need to get it done ASAP, right? Now, another piece of the puzzle that I am going to tell parents and students that you need to check on is before the start of the financial aid process, right? So before the summer is out, right? And the reason I say before the summer is out, because I want to make sure that you can change anything if you do need to change it at school and everything else, right? Before the start of the financial aid process, make sure that everyone's information is correct, okay? Now, you might be thinking, what do you mean everyone's like names and stuff are correct, right? The things I'm most concerned about are your names and your social security numbers. Okay. Now, let's say that your name, right? Especially like my parents too, right? They were immigrants, right? The first time they got their social security cards, like, this is wrong, right? And so obviously I was very young at that point, but they told me the story later, right? The first time they got their social security cards, the names are wrong, but that's all they had. So that's what they had to make their driver's license with, this and that, so on and so forth, right? And then they finally changed it. And then their whole life was turned upside down because things changed, right? Their credit cards went under their own name, their license didn't match, this and that, so on and so forth. A lot of things were problems, right? So you want to make sure that the spellings are correct, right? Now, spaces have plagued me with problems throughout the course of my financial aid career, right? A lot of people think that, oh, my name is like, I don't know, let's just say it's like A space B space C, right? And they think for the longest time that their middle name is B, right? But on their actual like legal documents, their first name is actually A space B, right? So if you have spaces in your first name, please make sure that it is done the correct way. That's actually what happened to my parents, right? Their first names are actually A space B, but it's not anymore, right? Their first name is just A, and then their middle name has now been designated for the last, how long has it been? 40 something years as B, right? That's how their IDs were made. So again, let's take care of that right now. The second part is social security numbers, right? Now, parents, your own, you probably memorized by heart, right? You have to use it here, there, you use it all the time. So you're fine, right? When you're signing up for that Home Depot kind of, credit card, when you're buying that new fridge, right? You use it, right? But students, right? How many parents can say that they memorize their student's social security number by heart, right? Do not, right? And also, I will say this one more thing. Your tax return is not a kind of like indisputable piece of evidence that tells you what your student's social security number is, right? I had a family, right? They had sworn that this was their student's social security number. They had been filing taxes and, the student as a dependent for the last, 16, 17 years, right? Only to find that when we tried to do the FAFSA, the social that they provided to me on their tax returns did not match, and the IRS was not able to match the student's information to the social security number. So I had them dig into that, into that baby binder to find the social security card, and they were one digit off. For 17 years, they had been using someone else's social security number. Okay, so please make sure to check actual documents from the government, like your social security card, to make sure that your social security number is correct. Okay. Now, just to brag a little bit about our program, why are we different? Well, we're different because we take you as you are. We don't ask you to try to lower your income by, buying life insurance policies or tax deferred annuities, right? We don't say that your student needs to have a 4.5 or like a 1550 on their SATs, right? We also don't force you to apply to colleges, right, that you would never go to. I know a lot of other companies do, right? And so, right, I tell families we have free consultations. We never charge, right? We talk to you. If we can help you, I'll let you know. If I can't help you, I'll give you some tips and tricks, and then hopefully that helps you out in some way or another, right? But if I have deemed that I cannot help you, there's probably not a good chance for your family, right? But I'd probably say for 85% of families that come to me, there is something that we can do for you. So please sign up for that consultation. Okay. Now, again, to brag a little bit more, our recent results, right? This is a student that is headed to Chapman. We were able to get them $30,000 there, right? Again, the kind of like stats of the family, the financial stats are there on the left, right? But they also got $35,000 from Fordham. We were also able to get them $37,000 from University of San Diego, right? This student, right, family income was at 230,000, right? We were able to basically get them about 25,000 to $28,000 at the UCs, right? Across the board, across all of them, right? Santa Clara, they got $67,000, right? LMU, they got $70,000, right? So again, very great result for this family, right? They're going to school for, pennies on the dollar, right? This family went to Baylor, right? Income's at around 440, roughly speaking. They own their own home, they have other businesses and properties, and the offer that we were able to get from Baylor was $42,000 a year, right? So even for higher income families, we have been able to get great results, okay? So hopefully your family is the next, right? Now, I do want to make sure that we open it up for Q&A, right? So if you do have questions, go ahead and, put them in the Q&A, put them in chat, right? And as you guys are doing that, I do want to make sure that you guys have all these links, right? These QR codes take you directly to the pages where you can book a financial aid consultation or kind of reach out to our coaching program, so that they can answer questions about either the college application intensive or a more long-term coaching program for you, right? So if you are interested in financial aid, you can use a QR code. You can also text 949-775-0865. You can text it money, and then we'll provide you kind of information about our program. We'll also help you sign up for a call, right? If you're interested in our coaching programs or the college application intensive, again, QR code or text college to 949-775-0865. Okay. All right. I did a lot of talking today. I had a longer than normal one because we're kind of doing a combo thing here, but I do want to open it up for kind of questions, right? So I will kind of let you guys kind of put those out there. I will also go ahead and put the link for the financial aid consultation into the chat here, okay? So that you guys have 3 different ways of contacting us, so you have no excuse, okay? So again, if there are questions, please put them in the Q&A or in the chat, please. Okay. Okay, so we have a question here. It says, what is the key to getting relatively larger financial aid packages for higher income families like your Baylor example? So there's a lot of different pieces to the puzzle, right? Now, I live in California, right? Living in California definitely has its perks. Well, I mean, less perks nowadays. The weather's a little funky, right? But with living in California, one of the things that happens is that you have a higher cost of living, right? Now, if a family that makes $400,000 and lives in Wisconsin, right, or Montana or Texas, right, versus a family that makes $400,000 in California, there's a lot of differences. Income tax differences, right? California has one of the highest income tax rates, right? Cost of living differences, right? So those are all things that we take into account to try to explain to the school that, hey, Baylor costs $93,000 a year. We cannot afford that, right? even if we make $400,000, right? So there's different pieces that we work on the FAFSA, on the CSS profile, right? On different additional forms that are turned into Baylor to give them that picture and help them understand that $93,000 is not a financial possibility for our family. Okay. But everyone's situation is very different, right? And so that's why we always tell families to sign up for that consultation so that we can understand your situation and give you a better idea of what your family can get. Just because the income is the same, so let's say you make 400, you have a next door neighbor, they work at the same company in the same position and been in there for exactly the same amount of time, right? And they also make 400. Yeah, your income on paper is, the same, but your tax returns could look very different. So that is something that we definitely want to take a look at to understand your situation a little bit better. Okay. Okay, I have a second person that just emailed about, can we meet with you tonight? So again, thank you. I will email you right after this so that we can go ahead and figure out a time. I'll also send you a Zoom link so that we can talk about that as well. All right. I'm not seeing any more questions today, right? So hopefully you guys enjoyed kind of the training we had today. I might think about doing a little bit more combo trainings, right? But I will be kind of jumping on again, like I said, on April 24th, we'll be having a little kind of talk about kind of what we should be kind of working on at this current moment. I'll also kind of debrief about what I learned at the Western Association of College Admissions Counselors, right? So that you guys have that information as well, right? We aren't gatekeepers to information. We try to share everything that we can with you guys. Okay. All right. So everyone have a great night, right? The sun is still out, so go enjoy, some vitamin D there, right? And if you have any questions for us, reach out in the Discord if you're a coaching family or in Facebook, right? Via Messenger, email, whatever you guys can get a hold of us through, go ahead and do that so we can answer your questions. Okay. So I'll leave this up just so that people can kind of, scan those QR codes, and I hope to see you guys all again next week. Okay. All right. Everyone have a good night. Bye-bye.